I was going to say that SEO with Fat Joe is as peaceful as this, but then the birds are all having fights.
Did you know that Google personalizes many searches by city and Also Asked is the only tool to access live People Also Ask data at city level? Try for free at alsoasked.com.
Tired of SEO guesswork? Quadra's AI agent goes deeper to uncover high-impact optimizations and completes hours of SEO in minutes. Get started now.
Hello. Found out I was speaking last week, so thank you for coming to the second dress rehearsal of this talk. This is how to avoid embarrassing yourself when discussing SEO data. I think there are two types of people in this world, people that work in SEO and people that regularly embarrass themselves. And unfortunately, sometimes these overlap, usually in a place called LinkedIn. But this is also sometimes referred to as the reports day cringe zone, which is a place I've lived in since 2015. However, hopefully, after the next 20 minutes, you guys will be on the blue side, outside of the cringe zone in the safe area. That's the ambition. This talk comes with no "it depends" jokes, you'll be pleased to hear. It's been done. You probably heard 3 of them this morning, I don't know. But I am Oliver Brett. I am Head of Strategy. That's a very swanky job title. And I've been at Screaming Frog for 10 years. This is a chart of the common SEO experience with suffering up the side and number of years you've been in the industry. I am floating somewhere into space over here, which is reassuring. This is the team. We are actually an agency as well, and I think some of my clients are in the room. So Emily, please upload that post for us because we sent it to you last month, and I know compliance have been on you, but that's your problem. Most of us just know us for the software, but we actually we do help out with clients, and we do PR and even a bit of PPC and SEO as well. So that's fun. In fact, none of the spider devs are in that photo because they're too cool to show up. And yeah, I'm not the sole developer as claimed. I also just got back from a trip from Paris, which is why these slides look like the terrible default template that they do. Paris, you say? How romantic? Yes, but as I discovered I was speaking last week, this is the girlfriend, and she's thinking, maybe, as the sun sets on the Louvre, now is the time to propose. And I was thinking, yes, rings, I could use them in a Venn diagram. That's a great idea. Did I propose? Yes. I proposed lots of slides for this talk. Here's me thinking about it under the Sacre-Cœur while we watch some musicians do something. Here's me by the river, great spot to get down one knee and load up your laptop. This is a facial expression that's sort of somewhere between a smile and disappointment, but you guys are having fun, so that's the main thing. In this talk, I'm going to be talking about SEO jargon, then I'm going to talk about the limits of some SEO tools, or how I learned to stop worrying and love GA4. And then we'll explain like they're 5 with some semantic stuff, which should hopefully cover things over. The main lesson for today, if you don't take anything else home with you, is that correlation does not necessarily equal causation with when you're reporting on SEO data. But that's okay if you kind of explain it in the right way and dance around the facts that you may or may not have. So part 1, and this meme will mean nothing if you're not from the UK, but just ask a Brit, I guess. We're going to talk about some jargon. To explain this is me at university. I thought history would all be about castles and really big catapults blowing up castles. However, Warwick University isn't in the castle of Warwick Castle. It's actually in Coventry, which was a shock to discover on Freshers Week. 3 years later, though, I came back with a bit of an existential crisis mode where I was all aware of this philosophy and stuff and all these French thinkers that go and have photo shoots of themselves looking very smart like that. And I was thinking, everything is bias, power is knowledge, the author is dead, objective proof is impossible, which is one of the main takeaways from this part of the talk. Then I joined Screaming Frog, and just like that, I thought, yes, SEO, it's easy, let's just get the facts, let's get the traffic, let's do it. 10 years later, I'm just kind of thinking, is anything real? I don't really know. So let's start with a very philosophical question. What is traffic? If you know what these are, you probably have a sore back and 3.2 children. This is what traffic used to be about, clicks and hits on the website. These days, there's lots of different things that traffic could be. It could be page views, sessions, users, clicks. These all mean slightly different things. First tip I have is don't mix these up and don't start reporting on one set of numbers and then change your mind. Second point is explain what you're using and why you're using it, because that can be very important to explain, what a session is and why we care about getting new users or that kind of thing. Especially if you're describing more than one in the same email, because at that point things get a bit confusing. I think Search Console clicks are the easiest and simplest way to explain traffic because they aren't ultimately impacted by cookies because the data is taken from the Google page itself rather than on your page, and then therefore you can get away from any terrible GA4 tracking, which I'm sure everyone has somewhere on their website. There are some distinctions between sessions with GA4 being events-based, whereas the old one was sessions-based, and I don't have time to go into that, but there is quite a big area as to why a session is no longer a session, which is an existential question that I think about on most days. One tip I have for you, though, with traffic is you can always segment it. You could get away with telling the client that we're down 50% year on year because the gray line, which, I don't know, maybe for argument's sake is the blog here, is down. But if we divide it into segments and pretend that maybe the red line is the commercial part of the website, you can start to say that, while overall traffic is down, maybe, different parts of the website are performing better than others. And that can be a great way to cover yourself when things aren't going too rosy. Another way of doing this is stacked segment graphs. So I love this. All these different colorful lines represent different parts of the website, and that's how many clicks they get each month. So you can see the gray line here was really wide at the start, which is why everything's boosted up previous years. And now as things have gone, the informational traffic has declined, but then ultimately the red bit is still as good. And the red bit makes all the money. So that's the main thing. Estimated traffic isn't very reliable. We get a lot more traffic than that. I think estimated traffic can be used to try and guess roughly where things are if you use it relative, but don't start using estimated traffic and your own traffic. Next section then is what are average rankings, which is another philosophical question that I often think way too much about. One thing I have no idea about is what this number means in Search Console. And I think everyone thinks this, but they're too afraid to ask. So I just thought I'd say that on stage. If you mouse over, there's a description that is also just word salad. And if you ever click this Learn More button, there's this page on the Google website with Pac-Man on it, and this wonderful graph of this is how your rankings are going to go. And it mentions AMP stuff, so they've clearly not updated this in years. $1 billion company, my ass. One thing to make a note of is there are lots of different types of average. So when you say, on average or X position, what do you actually mean by that? And I'm not a clever math student, so I don't know what these mean. But there are ways you can manipulate this. And if you want to claim what the average is, you can always change what the type of average it is. And that way you can, change what you're saying, depending on how you want to look at it. Another thing to think about with ranking specifically is the average ranking position is relative to the time frame that you're tracking. So this is Screaming Frog's rankings for the keyword spider, which is a very important keyword. We'll defeat Wikipedia one day. If you look at it over the course of a year, maybe our average is, 40th. If we zoom in the past few months, then our average is suddenly 20th, and then we can pretend that results are a lot more rosy than perhaps they are over a wider time period. It's also worth thinking about if you are comparing the ranking average of a bunch of keywords, do you understand what that bunch of keywords is? Is this keywords you've cherry-picked and gone for ones you already rank well for, and then you can say, the average ranking position is improving? Or is this everything that the tool that you're using is tracking, and therefore it's going to be a lot wider? And a final point on rankings is, what do you mean by first? Because some tools that we use, this is stat, actually track potentially differences between if you're ranking in the AI overview or Google Flights or the featured snippet. Does that count at position 1, or does position 1 count from the organic positions? So slight difference there, and again, something that might change however you want to interpret it. Authority. He's looking very serious there. I just imagine he's doing a photo shoot as a philosopher of him looking philosophical, and he goes for that and he's like, yeah, that photo looks good. Put that one in the book. Authority, or how to be a smart ass in front of the PR team. Right. Domain rating, domain authority, all that just isn't a ranking factor, and I think we know this, but Search Engine Journal still figured out to do a clickbait heading on that to get me to click that article, which is very clever of them. But it is still very useful. One thing to make sure you're aware of is there are different tools that do different things here. So you've got the classic domain authority from Moz, domain rating from Ahrefs, authority score from SEMrush. They're all 100-point scales, guessing how good your website is from an authority perspective, but they all work very differently. So it's make sure you're consistent with these. Our website is 87 according to Ahrefs, 65 according to Moz, and only 51 according to SEMrush. So I'll go have a chat with them at their stand and see if we can bump that up after this. Another thing that a lot of people do, perhaps, or misinterpret is sometimes clients come to us and they say, we want to improve our domain rating by 10 over the next year. And that's an ambitious goal. But one thing you have to remember, and this is a screenshot from Ahrefs trying to explain how they do it, is that ultimately it's more dependent on how the data set of the tool gets more links and discovers more pages. So as Ahrefs or Moz or whatever find more pages on the internet, they then reassess all the other ones they've already got on that 100-point scale. So you could suddenly go from DA 90 to DA 80, and it might have nothing to do with anything you've done or how many links you've built. So that is something to keep in mind. There is no DR 101, as they say. One useful way to look at DA stuff, though, with authority and links, though, is you can bucket these up into different categories. So each of these shades of green is a different level. So the lowest, lightest green there, 0 to 29 domain authority links. And these are all for different competitor websites that we're looking at. So we can start to see who's been using Fiverr the most. You can then remove all the crappy ones that are below DR 30 or whatever it is. And then that condenses the graph a bit, and then you can better see, who's got the really authoritative links and who do we need to steal their plan from. Another good way of doing this is if you put these links into buckets, and then you can remove the DR 30s and get the percentage of their links that are over DR or DA 30 or whatever it is. That'll give you a percentage of how many of their links are any good, and that can give you a benchmark for how things are performing. EAT, you've got to have an EAT slide, it's Brighton SEO. Not a ranking factor as well, as I think everyone knows, but good sites are better than bad sites, so do EAT, I guess. And the conclusion with this part is that, correlation does not necessarily equal causation. You might have lots of different things, all these rankings and traffic and authority signals that you're monitoring. They don't necessarily mean that that's the reason things have changed, which is important to reference. Part 2 then, the limits of SEO tools, or how I learned to stop worrying and love GA4 slightly. I'm going to irritate people who make link tools, rank tools, anyone with an API in Google in the next 3 minutes, and I won't be employable after this. Link tools don't have all the links, so that's an important point to remember. If you are a hypothetical link tool provider with a database, this might be the scale of your database. This might be Google's database, and it might be slightly different. You might have some links that Google hasn't found, and Google will definitely have a lot of links that you haven't found. But then that's still a tiny proportion of probably the wider web, which is full of all of these wonderful things. The Screaming Frog videos are especially annoying for our marketing team. We're trying to rank for our own brand, and we keep getting beaten by these little buddies. It's a very interesting search intent for Screaming Frog. And as these things grow over time, your tools will get better. They'll change their databases. They'll grow. Google will find more things, and people will take more photos of the Eiffel Tower instead of proposing. Link graphs go up generally, and while we like to take credit a lot of the time with our PR team getting all the links, sometimes it is just the case that the data set that you're using has also improved. All these competitor websites all grew at roughly the same pace. And maybe some of that is just that Ahrefs has found more links as it's gone. And then a final point on link tools is data freshness. So while some tools will say you're increasing with links all the time, if they're not being updated enough to check for 404s and lost links and reducing that at the same pace, then that is also a consideration. Ranking tools, few things to think about when you're trying to figure out, am I first or not? Where are they tracking from? Is it a local thing? Is it a data set based in London? Is it something to do with whatever country you're in? Are you doing a very local campaign? Did you decide the list of keywords, or is it based off everything they have? So, if you're tracking a range of keywords, are they cherry picked by you, or was it the out of everything that they have? How often do they update? Is this a monthly ranking update? Are you first this week or next week, or is it doing it once a month? Which devices are they tracking? Because mobile and desktop on the search results can be slightly different, and I know some tools track mobile position and desktop position separately. And then do you have any naughty keywords that might be a bit tricky? Because if you had a client who did gambling or cannabis or anything naughty like that, you don't actually get any data in Keyword Planner for those keywords. And a lot of these ranking tools will use Keyword Planner data to amalgamate their estimated traffic stuff. So definitely something worth looking into as well. Now, if you know what not provided is, you are officially old and you're probably, your back's a bit stiff. You're probably having a nap at the back. But not provided is still a thing, and there's lots of filtering involved in a lot of these ranking tracking tools to protect user privacy. If you search for hot Oliver Brett pics, I don't show up, which is unfortunate. But that kind of thing, maybe we don't need to know about. And there's some good examples here. So here we've got a search console. This is where I filtered the clicks to just show the brand. So like the query has been filtered to just the brand. This is where I filtered it to not contain the brand. And this is unfiltered total. And if you're good at maths, you'll figure out there's a slight difference here. Before we get to that, so the people trying to do the maths can do it quicker. If you want to find the actual number, you can mouse over and get it there. You can export it as well, but I also don't know how to take a screenshot while it's doing the mouse over thing. So I say, I'm one of these old people that can't use a computer now, which is terrifying. Anyway, so yes, maths is not mathsing. The contains brand does not contain brand equals 212K, and total clicks is 269K. So there's a bunch of keywords there that aren't being included either way when we filter it. And that's something just to be aware of. APIs. As Pal knows all too well, API stand for artificial intelligence. Please don't take my job. Some APIs are better than others, and it's worth double checking if the API you're using from a tool is giving you the same numbers as the tool gives itself, because some of them use slightly different metrics on their API, or it's a bit delayed from what you see in the tool. Some are really good though. The Search Console API. So if you export all your queries in Search Console, you'll get a limit of 1,000 rows. But on the API, if you connect that up to BigQuery, if you're a massive nerd, you can then get a lot more information off the back of that as well. Right, GA4, everyone's favorite place to be. It's a bit like London. You have to go there for work, but you don't really want to be there. There's a few things we've got to think about here. So one is data retention policies. You can set the full data retention to 14 months. I don't know what the default is, but it's one of the other ones, and some people might have that only as 2 months, so that's worth checking. Some people filter out internal traffic, but then they work from home or Brighton Beach, so that's another problem you might want to look into. Engagement rates, I think the default is 10 seconds to be on the site to become an engaged session from a random session. We typically change that with our clients, at least the ones that actually followed the email I sent out, to a minute, because I don't think 10 seconds is really a reasonable time to suddenly become engaged with the website. But different GAs might have different setups for that, so your engaged sessions might be all different. And custom channels also a pain as well. So some of our clients decided that phone calls and emails also counted as a type of organic channel for some reason, even though that's not a search engine, which brings me on to an existential crisis of what is organic? I don't know anymore. Google has its own ways of figuring out what that search engine is and what counts as organic, and it's slightly different to its Google or Bing. So it's worth just remembering that as well, which is why sometimes numbers don't quite number. Conclusion here is that tools do their best, but they can never show you 100% of everything, and there's always going to be a bit of missing information. And to finish this off for the last 2 minutes, we have a quick fire round of a few things you can use to explain things a little bit clearer to people. My first tip for you is to write like a journalist who doesn't want to be sued. There's some great journalism in this country. You can write things like, God, imagine kicking a burning terrorist so hard that, anyway. Stuff like, allegedly your traffic is doing this, or according to this tool, we've seen an improvement here, or as far as we know, this has resulted in this, is a good way to caveat things without saying it depends on the loop. Oh, I made a joke about it depends, sorry. Line breaks, nobody wants to read a blob email. This email makes me want to go make a cup of tea. But at the bottom here, you can quite clearly scan that, even if it's about a slightly complicated topic. Data visualizations are good. In our Spider tool, we developed very swanky ones that are completely useless. I mean, I don't know what that tells you. It kind of looks like a pond. Maybe the frogs come out there. We even did a 3D one, which you can then zoom in on, and you can become one with the crawl for some reason. So one of our developers spent a summer building that, and no one's ever found it in our stupid menu of 200 things. I like colourful graphs, and I think this is a good way to show traffic over time in different segments. But if you're boring, you can use bar charts instead. Maybe looking at it on a quarterly basis might be easier for you. Tables is a nice way to summarize data. We're trying to say, yeah, sure, they built loads of links, but we built more links, and actually our links are better than their links. That could be a nice way to settle that argument with a client. And telling stories is another good one. You might find a villain, like a rival brand that you really despise and they hate, and you're trying to outsmart them in the search results, and you give them updates on that once a month. That pesky blog post that you hate but you just can't delete, and it just keeps getting traffic even though it has nothing to do with what you offer. That kind of thing. It can help to set a goal at the start of a campaign or a project and say, okay, we're going to work towards this, and then each time you can reference that. And generally, it's nice to ask your manager or your client what they want to see and just keep bringing that up each time you report on the same data. Coming up with nice metaphors to summarize things is a nice way to explain things to a CEO who's too silly to really understand a redirect. We like to go frog ones because we're the frogs, I guess. Tables like this in the timeline is a good way to show that, with different events that happen to help justify what's gone on. You can do that keyword planner as well to show search interest, or do Google updates. Adapt the content to your audience. It's a pretty obvious one, but that's in there. And finally, don't waste people's time and just get on with it, really. So in conclusion, correlation does not necessarily equal causation, but if you explain things in the right way, you can kind of get away with it. And hopefully now you're firmly in this blob here. Thank you very much.
Demand sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.